Welcome back, Agents. This is Michael Bain, also known as Agent Zero, one of the admins of Agents United. We're here for the second edition of the Zero Hour, our official Agents United podcast. I want to say a big thank you to everyone who got through the entire first podcast. I know it ran a little bit long. We had a lot of content, a lot of ground to cover. Hopefully you found it interesting. Hopefully you learned something, or at least got thinking about some things. Maybe you disagreed with me. More than happy to hear your feedback. A lot of new stuff that's been released, and we really wanted to get that second podcast out quickly, a little bit ahead of schedule, to try to break down some of the new things that we're seeing in the game, particularly as it pertains to the augmented ISOs that have hit the game and allowed us to further customize our characters. A lot of things happening in Agents United. We, as of last night, have 4 new administrators, so if you haven't welcomed them yet, please give them a big welcome. We're happy to have them upstairs. I know they're going to work really hard to make our community even better than it is as we continue to grow. Alright, a little bit of overview of what we're going to cover today. We're going to start out actually with the enhanced ISOs as they pertain to Chapter 4 of Season 2. Just going to start with Mission 1 and work our way through Mission 6. I'm going to give you my feelings. I've used some of these. I've got some of these. I'm going to tell you what I think about them. Are they player versus player viable? Are they useful? Are they well designed? What are they like? Going to give you kind of my, seal of approval or disapproval or whatever you want to call it. And then after that we'll cover the character-specific AISOs as well. Touch a little bit on the AISO system as a whole. And finally we'll do a breakdown of Fandral, our newest 90 CP hero that's been released and is now available for general purchase. So we begin in Season 2, Chapter 4, Mission 1, and the heroic battle there features 2 of my favorite heroes, anti-heroes, whatever you want to call them, and that's Emma Frost and Magneto, 2 of MAA's powerhouse characters, extremely player versus player viable. I'm actually using both of them in this particular tournament, and hopefully they'll take me to a finish that I'm happy with. Not characters you would suspect or even think need an extra character-specific passive, because they're already great in their own right, but hey, they've got them anyway, and let's take a look and see what they do. If you've heard me talk about Emma before, you know she's my favorite. I have literally used her in every player versus player tournament since she's become available, and she's been great for that type of thing. Got a lot of very good finishes with her. Well, her Eternal EISO bestows a passive on her, very cleverly named Diamonds Are Forever. And what that does is Diamond Body will no longer trigger organic recovery. Diamond Body was, when introduced, an amazing thing. It actually allowed Emma to take 10% of the normal damage she would take in any given physical attack. You can do the math here. If someone's going to hit you for 60,000 and you do away with 90% of the damage, suddenly you're only getting hit for 6,000. I mean, it could definitely be a game changer, and it made her hard to kill. Organic recovery, however, was essentially a cooldown that only allowed it to proc once per round when she was hit. Now, with Diamonds Are Forever, it can actually proc multiple times, so you could conceivably gang up on Emma, hit her with everything you've got, all 3 of your heroes if you get to attack before her, and she could take very minimal damage. So I was really lucky. I actually got this one pretty quickly. It was top on my list. And so far, I surprisingly have mixed feelings about this one. And the reason being, Diamond Form has a chance to proc once around. I mean, it's not 100%. It's not like the first time you get hit in a round, you're only going to take 10% of the damage. You've got a chance to take 10% of the damage. So in order for Diamonds Are Forever to have any impact in your match whatsoever, Emma has to be attacked twice in the same round, and then Diamond Form would actually have to proc twice in the same round. So if Emma gets attacked, gets Diamond Form, and is attacked again, and there's no Diamond Form proc, then it actually didn't do anything. So my own observation of that being, it doesn't happen a ton, meaning you may be better off using a different EISO. And specifically, I'm always talking about Distant when I refer to Emma, because she turns into a mega damage dealer with her mental trauma. That being said, because it is random, it is something that could go off a ton in a single round or a lot of times consecutively every time she's attacked, which would make it, in fact, a game changer, and I've heard reports of that from people. I haven't experienced that myself. That's not to say it doesn't happen. I don't know what the proc rate is. It's something that would be nice to know. But, like anything reliant on a diminishing probability, this is not necessarily something that's as good as it first seems. So, my feelings on this one, like I said, kind of mixed. I'm glad I have it. I'm not ruling it out yet, but it wasn't the immediate must-have, must-use EISO that I was hoping or expecting it to be. So, to Magneto, the second half of that heroic battle, with the Fluxing EISO, and that bestows Superconductor as a passive on Magneto. I like the description on this one. Replaces Magnetized with Polarized, which cannot be removed or prevented. So this definitely takes the cake for most annoying new EISO. Magnetize is one of the most frustrating debuffs out there in that it doesn't really seem like a big deal, but once you get it on you, it can really mess you up. It's like that obnoxious paper cut that you got that suddenly became infected and caused you to lose your finger or something. Magnetize means Magneto is always going to critically hit you and that you can't dodge, and he also gets a chance to preempt you. So now the fact that you can't scroll it off, prevent it with Mystic, get rid of it when he dies, it's just a nightmare. Even your non-metallic heroes that are hit by Magneto and are stuck with Polarize for the rest of the match. I personally love it, or at least I hope I'm going to love it when I get it. Hopefully I'll get it. And I hate facing it because it's just Magneto has the chance to suddenly preempt all your heroes and he's going to critically hit them every time. One of the better EISOs that have been released, and by better I mean more desirable, something you want to have and use. And the nice thing too about Magneto is he is a base class hero, meaning he's effective not just with an alternate uniform, he doesn't have one. So you can still throw in that second EISO, and the obvious choice there being quick, so you can get those instant magnetic field shields up, get yourself some extra turns. Love that one. Emma Frost, mixed feelings on, but not ruling it out yet. Well, moving on to Chapter 4, Mission 2, and we have Incredible Hulk's EISO, also known as Thick, which bestows Bulk Up on the Incredible Hulk. Bulk Up reduces the damage taken for each Hulk Up. It makes Hulk Up really just do double duty. Not only is Hulk going to hit harder as he gets madder, but he's also going to be able to take a bigger beating. I really like the straightforward nature of this EISO. I could see it being useful in player versus player depending on what type of setup you're running for your team. Are you defensive heavy? Are you offensive heavy? What type of hit point setup do you have going on? Taking all those things into account, I don't think this is necessarily must use if you want to use Incredible Hulk, but I definitely could see it being a beneficial one depending on how you play the games. I actually do have this one. I like it so far. I put it in my Tactician Grey Hulk and seems to be getting the job done. Haven't tried it out in player versus player yet. May give that a go here depending on how the rest of the tournament goes for me. Alright, 4.3, and that's Sif and her Berserking EISO, which gives her Berserker. We're very familiar with Berserker. It's Sabretooth's ability, actually, chance to join in on an ally's attack, and also retaliate when an ally is hit by single target attack. Start out right away, Sif's battle is one of the most aggravating heroic battles that I've encountered, and that's mostly because it tends to be very turn dependent. You get to go first, you get to go second. To me, that has too much of a bearing on whether or not you are going to win this fight. I don't have this one yet, but we know pretty much what it's going to do. And it does make Sif a lot better character. She's not particularly useful in that you're going to think a whole lot about using her in player versus player, but this definitely adds a passive, giving her some extra attacks, makes her better, not viable. And the reason is Sif just doesn't do enough for anyone. I mean, yeah, she's a slashing-based, somewhat bleeding-based hero, and I guess if you're going to try to use her in player versus player with this EISO, and you're definitely going to want to use this EISO because it makes her a lot better than anything else, try with a slashing team and a bleed team. Maybe those extra attacks are going to help her out with that. You're going to start dealing more damage all around. I like it for her. I think it's really great. But as far as turning her from, someone you leave on the sidelines to someone you bring into the game, definitely not the case. Still working on farming this one. Maybe I'll change my mind once I get it. So that takes us to Chapter 4, Mission 4, and our 3 X-Men heroic battle with the classic trio of Cyclops, Colossus, and Storm. We've already seen Cyclops in a lot of player versus player situations. He's got some pretty nice alts, and he's just got some overall nice abilities as well. And so giving him another EISO may actually make him better. Let's talk about that a little bit. His commanding EISO has the Inspiring Leadership passive, which provides inspiring leadership to all allies, thereby increasing their stats. We're familiar with this. We've actually seen this for quite some time now in Captain America and later on in Moon Knight when he pretends to be Captain America. Very useful for player versus player. I'm not going to argue with higher stats for your allies. I mean, that's a great thing. Better defense, better offense. You name it, got it, higher is better. It's interesting for player versus player. You already get high stats by virtue of having Cyclops in your lineup because he can provide morale boost, and stacking that with Inspiring Leadership really could give you a leg up as far as the amount of damage your heroes are doing or the amount of damage they're able to take. All this EISO does is really just add to the fact that Cyclops does everything for your team. I've actually taken to calling him the video game cheat code hero of MAA. He gives you extra turns. He keeps you from dying. He raises your stats. Now he raises your stats again. There isn't really any benefit that this hero doesn't bestow on your allies. And I think for that, this particular EISO is fitting for him. I like the name Commanding. I mean, he's long been seen as a leader, and I like the fact that Playdom is stressing that with this particular release. So that brings us to hero number 2 of the X-Men heroic battle, and that's Colossus. Colossus has the Decimating EISO, giving him Atomic Buster. Atomic Buster is pretty nice. It gives him the chance to counter single target and area attacks with his Decimate ability. It's nice because you can combine this with the modern Colossus alt, and right off the bat you get a Protector who is not going to take much damage at all and is going to do some counter attacks. Decimated itself isn't a great attack, at least not initially. It's something that gets better as the game goes on, particularly as, if you're attacking exposed targets, it exploits exposed, so I don't know if you're looking to start some sort of exposed team, then maybe this is the EISO for you. With stat raisers like the Warbringer Axe, Warbringer in general, War Frenzy, whatever it's called, or Cyclops passives, which can raise stats, he can start hitting pretty hard. I think this is going to be player versus player viable, mostly at lower levels where you're not running into as much of a hero selection issue. So definitely worth having. I mean, I just like having it because it makes Colossus that much more interesting. I'm not using Colossus anyway. I have heard some talk that with his Phoenix 5 alternate and this particular one that he may be viable. I know some people are testing that, and maybe that's something we'll see in the future. I've kind of suspected that level 15 may open up an extra EISO slot when it's released. I know level 14 just came out, and no one wants to think about training their heroes to level 15, but we're pretty sure that's going to happen. But if you do get an extra EISO slot on an alternate uniform, the obvious pairing here becomes Bruiser Modern Colossus with Decimating EISO and the Big and Fast EISO. Extra turns, counterattacks, not taking a lot of damage. I think that could be pretty fun. So yeah, good EISO, go for it. Maybe more useful later, maybe useful now depending on what level you're at. And finally, the third of our X-Men trio who got a new EISO is Storm with her Windy empowered ISO. Wind Shear passive grants Protect Shroud at the start of combat. Some of you may remember the old days in player versus player when you'd run into some obnoxious Storm teams that you just couldn't hit because Protective Shroud was on them. Storm was reworked a while ago to give her some new abilities, put more of an elemental emphasis and some elemental-centric touches to her character to kind of focus on this whole God of the Elements thing. It's cool. I really like what they did with her because she became a lot more interesting as opposed to a straightforward character that was just using weather-based attacks. But one of the big problems is that she takes a few turns to get going. Some of this can be mitigated by the fact that you can make her a tactician and put the snappy service, the quick EISO in there, or gain some extra turns from her. But you still needed either to use up that EISO slot or to be fortunate enough to attack a blaster or get attacked by a blaster to get those extra turns and use those abilities. So Protective Shroud right away kind of solves some of those problems. And Protective Shroud, for those that don't remember, 50% chance of avoiding attacks, and that's a pretty high percentage. 1 out of 2 is going to miss you. But what it also does is it sets you up to use other abilities which are going to add on to Protective Shroud and set them up quickly, making her a really interesting choice for a defensive-minded team. When you use Storm's level 1 lightning attack, Protective Shroud gains Electrified. When you use her tornado attack, it gains Wind Wall, which is going to absorb some damage, and it also refreshes Protective Shroud and keeps that on you longer. So you don't have to pick and choose so much what direction you want to go with Storm right away, as this is going to give you some more options and you can kind of pursue everything. This is a really very fun and I think thoughtfully planned EISO that deserves some experimentation. It's, in my opinion, it's one of the better designed ones, and something that makes Storm, I keep using the word interesting, but a very interesting character to try to get to know and to experiment with. 4.5 takes us to Captain Britain and the aptly named Knightly EISO. It gives him Pendragon, which increases the chance for Roar of Valor to reduce damage. This is a kind of boring EISO, but it is pretty useful. Roar of Valor can greatly reduce the amount of damage that Captain Britain is going to take, which can make him a certifiable tank because, as you know, he hits pretty hard, particularly when you start using the Paragon Exploiter for his level 9. So yeah, certifiable tank, kind of along the lines of Hulk's thick EISO, other than as opposed to a straight ascending damage reduction, it's more probability based, and I'm assuming a bit more significant, or at least initially. Not a whole lot to say about this one. I mean, sure, it's great. Roar of Valor, it's really just going to depend on how much this is proccing in order to determine how useful it's really going to be. Finally, to wrap up the last of our new EISOs, we go to 4.6, and long time MAA hero Mockingbird was the first special ops hero introduced, gone through a slew of updates and upgrades and nerfs, and now she has her own EISO, which is the Predictive EISO. Love this one, ton of fun. Prediction passive makes mock combat trigger before an enemy's attack. Like I said, I love this, although it does come from one of the more aggravating heroic battles. A little bit of tip on what finally worked for me and got me to start winning these regularly, and that's the Cleansing and the Sheltered EISO. Cleansing removes a debuff around, and Sheltered, when you do have to recharge, gives her a shield. I actually started beating this fight pretty easily once I switched to these, and I got the EISO pretty quickly. So give that a try if the fight's not working for you. The reason that this EISO is so great is because you can enjoy your counterclass benefits immediately upon being attacked, as opposed to having to use them afterwards. Example, attacks by blasters will immediately give you an extra turn. Attacks by tacticians will immediately be countered, so on and so forth. Mockingbird now literally has every class advantage that you can have when she's attacked. I'm not sure how this is going to stack up in player versus player, but I already love thinking about the possibilities. This is my favorite of the Chapter 4 EISOs, just because of all the different doors it opens up, and I think all the neat things that we're really not going to see until we start seeing this in combat. And again, since Mockingbird is an effective hero as a base class hero, you can still put in morale boost, relentless, close, or whatever other different EISO you want to stick in that slot for another passive. So to address a couple of character-specific empowered ISO8s that didn't come out that we were expecting with Chapter 4, and that's Doctor Doom, Sabretooth, and Moonstone. There's some rumors going around about what these may be. Just want to talk about those here for a second. For Doctor Doom, it's supposedly the Unbreakable empowered ISO-8, which would make him immune to stun as well as exhaustion. I don't really feel like this is trying very hard. We've already got the Relentless EISO, which makes someone immune to stun that you could slot in him. I mean, as far as exhaustion goes, I know it is a thing. I don't really see this as being a huge win for Doctor Doom. I think there's a lot better options that you can slot, and if you just want the immune to stun, you can get Relentless as well. Sabretooth's, however, is a bit more interesting, which is the Frenzied empowered ISO-8. He gains Frenzy at the start of combat, but he's not going to survive being knocked out. So you're going to get 2 turns every round out of him, but he doesn't come back to life. I see this as a net win. You're attacking double attacks right off the bat, and given how short a lot of fights tend to be, this is something that could change the tide of a fight very early on and potentially get you the win at a price that, to me, seems more than worth it. Moonstone, the Analyzing, I mean, she is a psychologist, I guess. Analyzing EISO gives her a chance to counter attacks from enemies with Cower, Distracted, Disoriented, Intimidated, or Shell-Shocked. And if you are paying attention to what Moonstone does, these are the things that she can potentially preempt opposing attacks with. It's kind of interesting. I really don't like it. For starters, you have a chance to preempt, which is where these things are going to get applied, unless you've set your team up specifically to apply these things. And then, if Moonstone's attacked, which she may not be, then you have a chance to counter. So it's a chance off of a chance, and the gameplay has to go in favor for that as well. A lot of it's going to depend on proc rates, but my immediate reaction is I'm a little bit skeptical of how useful this is going to be, which is kind of sad. I think Moonstone's got a really nice skill set. She does some unique things, and I've experimented with her a little bit in player versus player. The potential's there. I don't believe this is going to be the thing to take her over the top, but I'm hopeful that I'm wrong. Like I said, these are rumored EISOs. These are in no way official. I don't know if they've been announced, or at least I haven't heard that. So if they come out being different than that, sorry. Well, anyway, that's our look at our new Chapter 4 Empowered ISOs, and that concludes the end of Part 1 of our second podcast. If you want to stay tuned for Part 2, we're going to talk about the all-new augmented ISOs, specifically the character-specific ones. So, thanks a bunch.